It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays, and this is going to be a really quick one because this week has been. But I do want to talk because my video on Monday was sort of bracing for the Jonathan Majors verdict, and then some of you may have seen me on Heinz's stream. Really, really great stream. I was really honored to be a part of that one, just because of the conversation. I mean, being live when the Jonathan Majors verdict came in was something, really surreal. And then, of course, I was the white lady on the stream, and so the audience kind of turned, but that's okay. There's a real feeling of what on many levels. And these are the moments that really tax our resiliency. No matter who you are, there's something in the news that is upsetting you and feels unfair right now. And I want to speak to that, whether it is, people who've seen the Jonathan Majors video and gone, how did they get reckless assault from that? The only people who know are the jurors. And that's the thing about juries. It's not like what you see on TV. It is a roll of the dice. And jurors take things seriously, but at the end of the day, they're people that want to go home. And, whether it's that, or what's going on in Ukraine, or what's going on in the Middle East, or, the few people who still watch me who are Trump supporters who are mad that he, court ruled he's kicked off the ballot in Colorado. There's something that doesn't feel fair right now. And that is life. Unfortunately, life is not a movie. There is no God of stories in your life. Sometimes unfair things happen. And the last It's Not Therapy was about, when things are unfair, and sometimes you can't fight it. And I know there are people really rooting for an appeal in the Jonathan Majors case. Personally, if I were him, and this is not me talking as a privileged white person. This is me talking as someone who has been stalked by a person who has made very similar accusations about me for 10 fucking years. Okay? It doesn't go away. No matter what happens, even if he appeals, there are still people who are going to believe he was an abusive boyfriend, even though the jury found that he was not guilty of intentional assault. Basically, he was reckless. So they believe she was injured in the car, which I believe was a mistake in the defense's theory of the case. They should have allowed the jury to believe, okay, she may have been injured in the car attacking him. And again, we don't know for sure. All of this is coming from news reports. It wasn't televised. It hasn't been recorded. So we're getting imperfect information. But I've talked to a couple of lawyers who are like, I do not understand that jury verdict. And I think a lot of people who have seen the video don't understand the jury verdict. But that's the thing. We weren't there. It's a heavy burden when you have to decide someone's fate. And people will always second guess you. And this is the imperfect reality of the jury system, and the law. This is the really unfair thing, because the law worked as intended. Laws in New York are designed to trip up men in these situations. The particular laws in question, at least one of them, came in the 1990s, post 80s crime wave in New York City, during that early period of third wave feminism, when the idea of domestic abuse and sexual assault broadened rapidly. And we are in a period now where women do have more agency in the world. And so it's not like we don't have historic cases. Emmett Till is the one that comes to mind where black men go down in a lie. I mean, fortunately, Jonathan Majors did not face Emmett Till's fate. And it's one of those things where even though he's rich, even though he was somewhat famous, he's still a black man. That still matters. The fact that people needed this to realize that is too bad. And that's part of the problem. Criminal justice reform is hard and it's slow. And, you know, people got really mad at me on Hines' stream for saying, you know, his best bet right now in terms of the long arc of his life is to hope for no jail time. If he doesn't get jail time, just do the community service, pay the fine, get on with his life, and leave it to PR people to spin it that it was not intentional. The jury found him not guilty of intentional assault. That matters. That, I think, and people, you know, shot the messenger on that one. But unfortunately, you know, as a person who went to the police and did not get fair treatment because I'm being stalked by a woman instead of a man, this is very personal for me. And it's okay to be angry. It's not okay to lash out at people who don't deserve it. And there's a lot of that going around right now. I mean, God, the footage from the Eaton Center over the weekend of, you know, a guy cosplaying a Hamas terrorist saying to a shopper, I'll put you 6 feet under, you know, I'll put you in the ground, something like that, with the cops right there. This is the world we're in. And, you know, then it comes down to the question of credible threats. And if you don't have to live a life where you have to decide between non-credible threats and credible threats, you know, good. I'm glad. I don't want anybody to have to live what I live or what other people live. But this is the reality. There's so much misdirected rage out there right now. And no individual can do something about it. Our governments are failing us. The global community is failing us. The systems that are designed, you know, on the principle of never again are letting it happen again. And as individuals, we can't do anything about that but support each other. And, you know, I did that show of unfairness because I wanted to show the science of the fact that when people feel like things are unfair, the brain doesn't crave restitution for the victims. The brain craves punishment of the guilty. And so all the focus is on the perpetrator and not on the victim. And that can make the victim feel very alone and insignificant. And, you know, the hard truth, another thing people are going to get mad at me for, but again, I'm a woman in the, you know, the entertainment industry. I've had to deal with this too. Jonathan Majors isn't the only one who's going to have career damage due to this. People are not going to hire Grace Jabari after this. So if you're a Grace Jabari supporter, I'm sorry. She's someone who slept with the talent and then jammed up the talent, and that damaged a franchise. That threw a wrench in it. People like that don't work again. I don't make the news. I just report it. It's an unfortunate thing that women are punished more than men for that stuff. When they sleep with men. When it's women, it's a slightly different story. Is any of this fair? No. And one of the things I was heartened by on Hines' stream, one, you know, it was just a great panel. It was a very, you know, mixed panel. And we talked about race, we talked about gender, and men and women were present, white and black people were present. Yes, those aren't the only races, but in this case, it was sort of a thing. And everybody laughed at me because I kept saying white-coated Jabari is a Persian name, and everybody laughed at me. But it was laughter in accepting the point of, yes, these things matter. It's so awkward, but yes, fair point. It was a nice, supportive communal group. And that was very reassuring because those conversations can still happen. And that's really all we can do in the absolute injustice that everybody is dealing with right now, because everything was so loud and so big, is that find places where people are judged by their actions, not by their identities, and where conversations can happen. And those places need, they do need somebody to be the heavy and be the bearer of bad news so they can function. Garbage collection doesn't happen on its own. You do have to maintain communities. And people don't like being told that they're out of line. And one thing I keep running forehead into is the fact that people think they make a mistake. They assume I'm going to kick them out. I'm talking about the Discord server now. They assume I'm going to kick them out, and so they act like I've kicked people out, and I have not banned a single person on the Discord server. What happens is I tell people, no, this is not okay. What you did wasn't cool. They lose their shit and they rage quit. And it's amazing how then I do follow up with people, which people keep telling me not to do, but I'm just that sort of thing of, I truly believe that people need to be allowed to make mistakes, but I do have to spend less time on this stuff because it's just burning so much. But people quit and then talk to me like I kicked them out. And I didn't. And it's like, this is reality shifting under my feet. But people get so primed to see a particular outcome that sometimes they forget when it actually didn't happen. And that's just a bunch of bad experience and vicarious trauma, seeing it happen to other people. And humans are messy. Humans are not simple, and all we can do is accept that. But being the person that has to deal with that all is incredibly exhausting, and that's why every good conversation I cherish. Even if people get a little bit rowdy, even if there's disagreement's good, right? The whole point of doing things in public is to do a counterpoint and have multiple views represented. There's no point in doing something where everyone's agreeing in that way. And I think that's what's been lost, that people have become so afraid of disagreement because of things like, one fight where, with Jonathan Major, she grabbed for his phone, a scuffle ensued. The driver said he was doing nothing, she was doing everything, but then, a camera angle may have been all that was the difference between innocent and guilty. And the reality is, that's life. Life is not a Marvel movie. We aren't guaranteed to defeat Thanos somehow in the end, and defeating Thanos, ain't necessarily so great if you're one of the characters like Gamora or Black Widow who got offed. And you don't get, your own movie afterwards. Life is not a movie. And the people I talk to don't expect fairness. And yet they rage when things aren't fair. which makes me think that, they're sort of frustrated optimists and they think you should have fairness. And so they get very upset because they don't expect it. And then, we expect bad things because we think it'll hurt less when they happen. But the truth is that's actually not so. Anticipating good outcomes actually means people have less of a negative response when they happen, because it isn't, if you expect a negative outcome and you try anyway, and then it's a negative outcome, it's like, see, I was so stupid for trying. Whereas if you eventually expect that things will work out, it's, well, okay, I didn't get it this time, but I'll get it next time. Life will go on. And I think the real problem for Jonathan Majors fans is there's no one-to-one scenario here where a black man has had this setback and come back in this venue. We can indirectly compare him to Robert Downey Jr. or Michelle Rodriguez or, any number of celebrities that have been arrested and then come back, like spend time in jail and then come back. We'll see what happens to Felicity Huffman. But in this case, there's the extra unfairness of the media has painted him as guilty of assaulting his girlfriend, and then they repeat all the evidence that came out at trial that the jury didn't buy. They didn't buy the intentional assault, so a pattern of behavior is irrelevant. It was reckless. It was not intentional. And I do think a PR team can clean that up. Eventually is a long time if you're in his position. I am aware I've been through being canceled. I have been through being shunned. Trust me, I am not being not empathetic to his situation. The opposite. The position he's in right now is terrible. And some people will say, oh, well, he beat up his girlfriend. That's fair. Like, that's not what happened. And shame on the media for painting it that way. Shame on the media for going all in on never hurt a woman and forgetting for some reason, because they don't like Jonathan Majors, that the law, the legal system, especially in New York, is biased against black men. Both are true. We have to deal with both truths. And these are messy. And these are, what can you do? Which is, you go back to that fundamental trauma principle of control what you can control. Healthy goals are based on things you can control. That's all you can do. He can't control the courts. He can control recognizing that you can't change the past. Yes. His statement was very interesting, that he's grateful that the jury saw that it wasn't intentional. It's disappointing that he was convicted of, a Class A misdemeanor. So he is looking at potential jail time. It would be very surprising if, the best outcome we can hope for right now is, people like appeals. He still loses years of his life. He's never going to get back what he's lost being dropped by Marvel and Disney. Remember that James Gunn got canceled. I know, another white guy. I know. It really seems like the very quick turn on Jonathan Majors was the fact that he made some enemies in the industry. And that maybe he was an asshole on set. Like maybe he was a dick on set. It's very possible. That's something he can control. He can't control the courts. And none of us can. When I was talked out of trying to go for a restraining order by a judge with, the artist known as Stalker Chan, they said, you're not a former domestic partner, so there's a good chance you won't get this restraining order. And that may inflame her. Like, they were actually talking out of going. They talked me out of going for a restraining order for my own safety. That's how messed up the system is. Because when it's domestic abuse with a woman complaining against a man, well, any domestic abuse, it's a separate line in Ontario court. It's a completely separate process, as opposed to, a restraining order against somebody you're not romantically involved with. And that's really not keeping with the times. And I'll still remember a sergeant saying to me after the detective screamed at me over the phone so loud somebody could hear across the room, the cop screaming at me, and then they denied they yelled. I remember the sergeant saying, when I said to him, what do I have to do to come back to you guys? And he said, well, if she walked up to you in a crowded room full of people and punched you in the face, that would be great. And I said, I'm sorry. Did you just say her assaulting me would be great? Is that actually the message you're leaving me with? And he spluttered, and the call ended very, very quickly. After that, 2 Division York Regional Police for the win. But life's not fair. Sometimes it's not. It's just not. You have to accept the unfairness, dust yourself off, and try again. And this is true for all of us. And unfortunately, the higher you try to climb, the bigger the stakes are. And I mean, if he did beat her up, it's unlikely. We don't have to say, if he intentionally abused her, because now we know, a jury says he didn't. And we'll never know for sure, but a jury says he didn't. So we can say that with relative certainty. But juries do get things wrong. So we don't know. And so it's not, at this point, it's not about what happened. It's about what everyone does next. And I believe eventually the truth does come out. I mean, the best ally I've had against the artist known as Stalker Chan is you guys. It wasn't the courts. It wasn't the government. All of that was a dead end. It's you guys who saw through her lies and supported me. The continuing lies, she's still at it. And it's just annoying background noise. And not a serious threat because of you guys. Because you don't believe her. And that's true for everybody. At the end of the day, you get punished. You take your knocks. I got punished during Gamergate. And it's been real interesting to see people who are still, in journalism going, believe women now. Because okay, yeah, okay. Right. Yeah, sure, guys. Where were you? I needed a job. That's a bit bitter. I don't mean everybody, obviously, just certain key people. But the thing that broke me more than anything is after the verdict, the big debate was what was going to happen to the Marvel franchise and the Kang the Conqueror character, not Jonathan Majors, the person. Real person. Grace Jabari's a real person. No, the big scuttlebutt wasn't that. It was what's going to happen in movies and TV shows. And that's like, really? But we see it, we process it, we move on. And that's it for me until Feedback Friday, because I am out of time. I forgot to help support this channel. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. Or our men's groups, Patreon and Coffee, get Discord links. GoFundMe does not provide Discord links right now, so if you want to kick a couple bucks there. But we're going to revisit this in the new year, because GoFundMe has turned out to not be an ideal platform for this. But that's neither here nor there. Thanks for watching, and be well.